Hello again to another Agakala React, and today we will be watching 10 movie rules that make no sense from What Culture. Another video from What Culture that's probably gonna be great. So let's just jump into it and see.
In the fantastical world of Hollywood filmmaking, it's not so much important that films be realistic, but simply that they adhere to their own internal logic. That is, lay down some clear rules and stick to them throughout. But as we all know, that's a lot easier said than done, isn't it? Especially in franchise cinema, which potentially invites a diverse array of different voices, lending their own knowledge or lack thereof to a project. But sometimes it's also simply a case of a single screenwriter failing to fact-check their own movie, or perhaps even trying to slip a contradiction past audiences in the hopes they either don't notice or just don't care. Yet care audiences certainly did where these 10 movie rules are concerned. So with that said, I am Gareth, this is What Culture, and here are 10 movie rules that make no sense. Number 10, don't feed gremlins after midnight. Gremlins. The Gremlins movies are of course governed by 3 seemingly specific rules. Don't get the cute creatures wet. Do not expose them to bright lights. And most importantly, don't feed them after midnight. We all know what happens when these rules are inevitably broken. Gizmo spawns Mogwai out of his back, which eventually transform into evil gremlins. And while the first 2 rules make perfectly simple sense, the third remains a major point of contention among fans. The issue is that after midnight is a vague and relative term. When does the post-midnight period end? And as briefly hilariously mentioned in the sequel, what happens if a Mogwai crosses time zones? Sure, fans have theorized that a Mogwai can't be fed again until sunrise, but this isn't information that the movie itself gives us. And so the precise mechanics of their physiology are left needlessly ambiguous. Number 9, the Xenomorph gestation period, Alien. The Xenomorph is unquestionably one of cinema's most terrifying antagonists. Yet it's also fair to say that the creature's physical characteristics have been inconsistent at best across the Alien series tenure. By far the most tinkered with aspect of the Xenomorph is its gestation period within a host's body before inevitably bursting out of their chest. The original Alien made it clear this took place within a few hours. Yet throughout most other entries in the series, this time is basically adjusted to suit a specific film's dramatic needs. For example, Alien 3 sees Ripley survive for several days before being chest bursted. And while some fans have argued that this is due to her being impregnated with a Xenomorph queen...
Yeah, exactly, I was going to say that. It's because there's a queen in her. It's not just any Xenomorph, it's a queen.
That feels like a stretch to justify iffy writing. Things pretty much go all over the place from this point. The atrocious Aliens vs Predator Requiem boils the gestation period down to probably less than an hour, and Alien Covenant follows a similar time frame. Again, you can argue that the gestation period differs depending on the biology of the host, but even then the wide disparity between human hosts is pretty ridiculous. Number 8, the rules of Quidditch, Harry Potter. Quidditch is of course the famous broomstick riding sport featured in the Harry Potter franchise. Yet the rules of the game are nebulous and confusing enough that even the hardcore crowd will have difficulty making sense of them, let alone mere casuals. For starters, students are able to use their own broomsticks, effectively allowing wealthier students to come to the field with a massitive advantage due to their superior wares. Doesn't seem very fair to me, but by far the biggest...
I haven't seen or read Harry Potter, so not much. I don't know much about it, especially about the broomsticks and stuff like that. So are the broomsticks different? Can someone tell me?
The issue consistently raised by fans is the sports scoring system. A mere 10 points are awarded for throwing the quaffle, a leather ball passed between players, through one of the opposing team's hoops. While if a team's seeker manages to catch the enchanted ball known as the Golden Snitch, they'll score 150 points and end the game immediately, potentially even causing their own loss in the process if they're still behind on points. Funny that. And placing so much importance on the Golden Snitch not only undermines the quaffle, but also the team-based nature of the game itself, given how it centers the game around the actions of just a single player. There's no I in team, but there is in snitch, or something. Number 7, the laws of aging, X-Men. The X-Men franchise may be a load of silly fantasy hooey at the end of the day, but audiences nevertheless expected the movies to adhere to basic aspects of human existence, like aging, for example. Since the X-Men prequels kicked off with First Class, the series increasingly stretched credibility by leaping forward a decade with each new movie, all while the focal superheroes all look more or less the same age. Given that Dark Phoenix takes place in 1992, some 30 years after First Class, we'll have to assume that the likes of Professor X and Magneto are now in their early 60s. Right, yeah. While you might play the mutant card and argue that their aging is slowed by that process, that still makes no sense at all considering that in Dark Phoenix, Xavier and Magneto are supposed to be just a few years away from looking like Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen respectively. Yet they do not. The only major character where this defense truly applies is Mystique. Given both her shape-shifting abilities and Beast flat out saying in First Class that she ages slower than your average person. This is one of those things that fans just need to roll with if they're gonna actually enjoy the series without nitpicking it to death. But it's undeniably distracting all the same. And while on the subject of the X-Men, I want to know what is your favorite X-Men movie of all time. You let me know in the comments section down below. Number 6, the Prime Directive, Star Trek. In Star Trek, Starfleet is governed by the underpinning principle of the Prime Directive, which prevents personnel from interfering with the natural advancement of alien civilizations, even at the cost of a Starfleet vessel or crew member. Fans have passionately debated its philosophical merits ever since it was first introduced in Trek's original series, and it's endured as a thematic mainstay of the various Trek shows and movies. The problem, however, is that its treatment has proven thoroughly inconsistent across all Trek media, largely a byproduct of the huge number of writers who have worked on the colossal sci-fi empire over the decades. Without the Prime Directive ever being presented in its entirety to viewers, they've been left to debate whether it's as strict as some Trek media seems to imply, or more of a moral guideline. The debate was ignited again with the release of Star Trek Into Darkness, which saw Kirk removed from commanding the Enterprise after violating the Prime Directive to save an indigenous species from an erupting volcano on their planet. The simple answer is that the Prime Directive is discretionary from captain to captain depending on their own respect for it. But more than half a century on, we still don't have a concrete grasp of its full scope and utility. Cheers for checking out this video today, folks, and if you are enjoying what you're watching, then hit that subscribe button down below for more What Culture stuff in your day. Number 5, Time Travel Logic, Looper. Time travel is a tough logical nut to crack at the best of times. So for Rian Johnson's sci-fi hit Looper, he basically decided to throw his hands up and accept the contradictions. Many complained about the film's various logical issues per its timey-wimey shenanigans, particularly the sequence in which young Seth has his limbs dismembered, and these effects immediately appear on old Seth's body. After all, if this always happened to Seth as a young man, wouldn't he always be mutilated as an older man? And so, in order to hang a lampshade over all this nitpicking, Johnson literally put a scene in the middle of the movie where old Joe tells young Joe that his logical questions aren't important and he shouldn't overthink it all. Good advice. Considering how the overwhelming majority of time travel movies are totally unwilling to confront their paradoxes, it's at least refreshing that Looper decided to embrace its inevitable non-logic. Number 4, the Double Jeopardy Law, Double Jeopardy. 1999's Ashley Judd starring crime thriller Double Jeopardy was a huge hit with audiences, despite being built on a fundamental misunderstanding, whether willful or not, of the American legal system. The film's protagonist is Libby Parsons, a woman convicted of her husband Nick's murder. But before she's sent to prison, she comes to realize that Nick most likely framed her and faked his own death. Charming. After being paroled, she invokes the Double Jeopardy Clause, which, according to the film's logic, means a person can't be convicted of the same crime twice, apparently allowing her to hunt Nick down and kill him without legal consequences. Of course, anyone with even a basic understanding of the law will appreciate how ridiculous this is, as the real Double Jeopardy Clause only actually applies to prevent people being convicted again for the specific criminal event they've already been tried for. And so, if Libby killed her husband in real life as she does in the movie, she'd actually be opening herself up to all sorts of legal action. Not smart. Number 3, the Rule of Two, Star Wars. Much like Star Trek's Prime Directive, Star Wars' Rule of Two is vaguely defined and interpreted with a varying degree of faithfulness by different parties. At face value, the Rule of Two is a Sith philosophy stating that only 2 Sith Lords can ever exist at one time, one master and one apprentice. The rule was first concocted by the legendary Sith Darth Bane, who felt that an overabundance of self-serving Sith Lords led to the Order's downfall through betrayal and infighting. And the Rule of Two endured for a very long time, allowing the Sith to operate undetected while maintaining a status quo whereby the apprentice inevitably killed their master and found themselves
their own. I'm thinking because I haven't really watched in either the prequels or the originals in a really long time. So where do they sit in the originals? another was obviously the thing, but was a status straight up that Darth Vader is Sith? I can't remember.
On apprentice to mentor, Star Wars media in general has found ways to conveniently handwave the rule of two over the years. Such as the Clone Wars, Asajj Ventress being presented as more of a dark Jedi than a formal apprentice to Count Dooku, who was himself Darth Sidious' apprentice. The rule became even more strained with the release of The Rise of Skywalker, which presented an entire fleet of Sith acolytes residing on Exegol with zombie Palpatine. However, the movie's junior novelization retconned the rule of two to mean rule by two, basically implying there can be many more Sith but only two Sith rulers. Yeah, okay. Number 2, the superhero no-kill policy. Given that most superhero movies are designed with younger audiences in mind, it's little surprise that a few frontline movie heroes like Batman, Superman, and Spider-Man tend to be profoundly moral people with a major aversion to killing. This is especially true in the case of Batman, who in Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight saga in particular has held a steadfast promise not to take the lives of his foes, for fear of crossing the line from heroism to criminality. Except, of course, the Caped Crusader is shown killing several people throughout the trilogy, whether blowing up the League of Shadows HQ, leaving Ra's al Ghul to twist in the wind, tackling Two-Face to his death, or blowing Talia al Ghul to holy hell. His hands are plenty bloody. The point isn't that these actions were wrong in any sense, but simply that rigid no-kill policies make no sense whatsoever, especially in a movie series desperately trying to seem as grounded and real as possible. Though it proved divisive with fans at the time, this is exactly why Man of Steel's decision to have Superman kill Zod was so damn effective, because it trampled over unrealistic binary morality and asked a bulletproof man to make an impossible decision. The fact that most superheroes these days don't make a big song and dance about the amount of bad guy death on their conscience also really underlines how unrealistic and unfair it is to hold anyone in their position to that sort of pristine standard. Tough life being a soup. And number 1, the aliens are allergic to water. Signs. M. Night Shyamalan's Signs revolves around an alien invasion on Earth, and concludes with a characteristically balmy Shyamalan twist. That the aliens are actually deathly allergic to water of all things. Ever since the film's release, fans have questioned why an alien species would dare try to invade a planet where 71% of its surface is covered by the very thing that kills them. Dumb aliens are one thing, but this perceived plot hole actually overlooks the movie's true logical fallacy, the inconsistency of the water rule itself. Late in the movie, we see that a glass of water severely scalds an alien's skin, and so, considering that there are 37.5 million gallons of water in the Earth's air at any time, shouldn't the aliens' sheer presence on our planet cause them some measure of discomfort? Even if you argue the aliens need to be hit with a greater concentration of water in order to be harmed, you'd think the residual water in the air would at least singe their skin if a light spill can make them resemble a third-degree burns victim, no? Signs is a perfectly entertaining movie up to this point, so it's just a shame Shyamalan invites so much second-guessing from the audience so late in the game. A damn shame indeed.
Yes, it's true. Okay. Those rules are kind of do not make sense, especially the one with water, the last one, and the no killing stuff. I mean, I was kind of like, isn't the whole premise of Batman vs Superman kind of based on the fact that so many people died during the Man of Steel, the fight of Superman with Zod? Because they pretty much, while they were fighting, they were destroying stuff like skyscrapers and things, so people were just dying, and then in the end Superman actually kind of just kills Zod because there's like what, 4 people Zod would kill. Yeah, that scene. It's always kind of like I'm kind of like I'm not sure how I feel about it, because honestly there was obviously kind of like in my opinion a bit different options, but that's what it is. In the heat of a moment, you don't really think, and even Superman can't really think ahead. So, yeah. Alright, thank you very much for watching, and I see you tomorrow. Bye!